Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. Today, I will cover two areas in my remarks: the pre-budget report and the Fiscal Responsibility Panel's 2020 annual assessment. This past year has been challenging, to say the least. The COVID-19 pandemic brought an unprecedented level of economic hardship for Bermuda and its people and caused a significant decline in government revenues. Today, we are issuing the government's pre-budget report in advance of the 2020-2021 budget, a report that appropriately reflects the impact of the coronavirus on our economy and will provide everyone with an opportunity to understand the focus of the next budget. It would also allow the people of Bermuda to provide feedback that will be valuable as the government prepares the 2021-2022 budget. Preparing the 2021-2022 budget will be challenging given the unprecedented uncertainties in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. And as I highlighted in my ministerial statement made in the House of Assembly late last year, in fiscal year 2020-2021, the government took unprecedented policy actions to redirect existing resources towards health and social support measures. Other factors which have had an impact on the framing and composition of the 2021-2022 budget include continuing deficits, high debt levels, and the debt ceiling, government's 2020 general election campaign platform, and the 2020 speech from the throne, economic considerations, taxation sensitivities, continuation of zero-based budgeting that will include a public service value assessment and to provide for a better quality portrayal of the range of services delivered by the government of Bermuda, feedback from the pre-budget report in advance of fiscal year 2021-2022, risks facing the country, and the implementation of the government's fiscal strategy, which is to reduce net debt and balance the budget by 2023-2024. The pre-budget report will be available this afternoon on the government portal at www.gov.bm/pre-budget report. However, before this release, I want to advise the public on a material change in the 2019-2020 financial performance as a result of an accounting adjustment. While it has been a challenging period due to COVID-19, there are other significant challenges the government has had to remain focused on. One of those is the failed development at Caroline Bay. As you will recall, in 2019, the government was forced to respond to legal demands on its guarantees of the project loans. It did so by purchasing the loans as opposed to direct repayment of the guaranteed loans, to avail itself of all legal remedies available to the lenders. Around the same time, the government also purchased claims related to subcontractors who remained unpaid for up to 1.5 years, many of whom are Bermudian and were struggling. The rights attached to the loans and the subcontractor claims allowed the government to petition to the Supreme Court of Bermuda for the winding up of Georges Bay Limited, the corporate entity that owned the assets subject to the guaranteed loans, and the appointment of joint provisional liquidators to take control of the companies and its assets. The liquidation process is still ongoing, and thus the GBL assets are still under the control of the JPLs. Therefore, while we expect control to transfer to the government during this year, the government currently only has a claim on those assets. This has an impact on valuing the claims according to public sector accounting standards. Our accountants and advisors have concluded and considering the current status of the liquidation process, they do not have enough information for the joint provisional liquidators to provide a valuation range for accounting purposes at this time. Therefore, the claims assets have been written down by $183.3 million to a nominal value of $1,000. It is important to understand that this does not mean the asset is worthless. In fact, once the government obtains control, we expect to restructure the assets as a going concern. The government has engaged professional advisors to assist in the development of a realization strategy that seeks to maximize the value of the government's claim. With the successful execution of any realization strategy, we expect to see value flow back into the financial statements. However, there are still a lot of challenges to overcome in order to obtain a return on the Caroline Bay assets. Although a non-cash write-down, it is of significant value, and it is a stark reminder that there can be a real cost to a government guarantee. Our budget process is clear and transparent, and this pre-budget report explains the complex issues and factors driving the government's fiscal policy decisions, while also giving everyone an opportunity to participate by way of giving us your views. I encourage everyone to please take the time to read the pre-budget report, and once you have read it, submit your thoughts, recommendations, and concerns by email to openbudget@gov.bm. We anticipate that this report will give the public a better understanding of our aims and objectives and encourage discussions on the budget strategy and how effectively it deals with our current economic and social priorities, especially as we continue to navigate through this pandemic and the uncertainty it brings. This report will also allow stakeholders, such as business and social groups, to understand and comment on options for the next budget. This can give stakeholders confidence that the administration's budget policies are grounded in longer-term fiscal and budget strategies. As we have done in previous years, we will also have a series of meetings in the coming weeks with members of the international business community, the Chamber of Commerce, local businesses, as well as the Trade Union Congress. Due to the pandemic, our meetings this year will be virtual. Once the consultation period has ended, around February the 1st, we will carefully evaluate all responses we receive as we finalize the budget. Once again, we post the pre-budget report on the Bermuda government portal at www.gov.bm/pre-budget report. I encourage everyone to please take the time to read it and submit your thoughts. We want to hear from you. On Friday, the 26th of February, I will deliver the 2021-2022 budget statement in the House of Assembly. Today, we are also releasing the Fiscal Responsibility Panel 2020 Annual Assessment. Established in 2015, the panel was created to increase transparency and international credibility, an international independent committee to review, monitor, assess, and publicly report on the fiscal progress of the government. In all of their previous reports, the Fiscal Responsibility Panel has warned of Bermuda's vulnerability to a global economic downturn. With the onset of COVID-19, this risk materialized in a far more powerful form than the FRP or the Bermuda government could have anticipated. And not of our making. It has had profound impacts on Bermuda's economy and our public finances. This government's immediate response to the crisis was swift and broadly appropriate, both concerning health-related and emergency economic measures in support of workers and businesses. The report can be found on the Ministry of Finance section of the Bermuda government portal and will be laid before the legislature when Parliament returns next month. In closing, I want to thank the entire team at the Ministry of Finance. This has been a tough year. Everyone rose to the challenge as we make every effort to get our economy back on track. Thank you all for your support. I especially want to acknowledge the hard work and dedication of service of our beloved Financial Secretary, Anthony Manders, who recently passed away. He was a dedicated colleague, a gentleman, a true family man, and integral to the process that every year goes into putting together the government's annual budget. As he was my most senior trusted advisor over the past 2 years, I'm grateful for the support he gave me and his hard work and dedication to the government and the people of Bermuda. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions from the media? Tara, I would like to go first.
I'll go first. All right. Good day, Minister.
I'm just trying to get a sense of how long the government is prepared to support those workers heavily affected by the crisis. Are we talking about years, months?
The answer to that question is we will provide support as best we can for as long as we need to. You will be aware that initially when we imposed the shutdown, we provided support for people for up to 16 weeks. We recently did a bit of a modification to that program to provide for persons who worked in bars and members clubs. And so we targeted the support for individuals who were impacted by policy decisions that the government made. Additionally, we also, for persons who were required to quarantine as a result. My expectation is that at some point in time, those restrictions will be relieved and folks can go back to some semblance of normalcy. However, to the degree that we can manage and keep our numbers at reasonable levels, the necessity of the government having to step in to provide this kind of support reduces. I would say, however, that there are people who worked in industries that have been negatively impacted by the virus, and those parts of the economy are taking longer to recover. And so, inasmuch as those persons require support, financial assistance is available to them, as is a supplemental unemployment benefit.
This upcoming budget has been described as one of the most, or the most important budget in the history of this country. You agree?
I think any budget, this will be my third one, is an important milestone in a country's history. This one, in light of the challenges that we faced over the course of the last year, will certainly be challenging, but also important because it will set for people to understand and to know what the government's strategy is for moving the country forward as we move past this pandemic.
Lastly, is there any update on GenCom repaying the government for that $11 million paid on its behalf for the redundancies at Fairmont?
We continue to be engaged in a process. You will be reminded that we did take some action by issuing a notice to them back in December. We have been in regular dialogue with them, and I would say that the discussions are progressing.
Thank you, Minister.
Afternoon, Minister, and thanks for having us. Few questions here. We wanted to check in on where the government debt level stands now. Last year it was $2.643 billion. Do you have a figure at hand for where we're at with it now?
The pre-budget report will have that number, Jonathan. The net debt is currently about $2.93 billion.
Right. And are you able, or is it in the pre-budget report, what the debt service is costing us at the moment? And I guess how concerning that is.
The expectation is that the number will be approximately about $128 million annually.
Right. Do we have a revenue target for 21, 22, or again, is that waiting for us in the pre-budget report?
Well, the pre-budget report does not take into account all considerations, and there will be opportunities for discussion on a couple of revenue measures. You will be reminded that I did advise folks publicly that I had no intention of raising taxes.
You did.
So we are just working through the numbers for the third quarter, which ended December 31st. I will be guided as we put together the budget for next year on what the performance has been over the course of the last quarter in particular, and what the forecast is looking like for the first quarter of this year, which is our fourth fiscal quarter.
Can you share with us any best case, worst case budget deficit estimates?
Well, we're targeting somewhere in the area of about $150 to $175 million. I would like that number to be smaller, and that's why the next couple of weeks are going to be really important.
Righto. In terms of, tourism revenue is probably not going to significantly return this year. Does the government have enough contingency funds, as it were? And if you don't, do you have any thoughts on how that would be addressed?
Well, we don't expect a full return of the tourism revenue until 2023, 2024. One of the strategies that we employed back in August when we went out to market to raise money, and you'll recall that I ended up at the end of the day increasing the size of the offering. The objective there was to raise sufficient capital money to ensure that we could fund the government for 2 to 3 years of deficits, because no one at that point and no one today still has any sense of how long this pandemic is going to last. We've done a relatively good job here in Bermuda of containing the spread of the virus. We do see, though, in parts east and west of us, that there have been second and third waves of this. And so in as much as we can continue to exercise real discipline here, follow the rules, mask, social distance, etc., if we can keep our numbers down, the negative impact on our economy should be lessened. And so for as much as I am doing work to forecast and project a budget for the coming year, to some degree, our success in being able to execute on that strategy will be dependent on the people of Bermuda and their ability to kind of work with us to keep the numbers of positive cases down and manageable. Because more cases results in more restrictions results in more brakes on our economy.
Yes. In terms of infrastructure projects, there's been this plan of rolling out some of these to get people working again. Are there any ones in particular that we can look forward to coming up that'll people will be working on?
I think so my responsibility has been to find the funding for these projects, and I've left the selection and the spending of the money on projects to the Colonel, Minister for Works and Engineering. My understanding is that he has retained the services of a project manager, and they are doing quite a bit of work raising awareness with small and medium-sized contractors on projects that they can do. And so from what I understand from Cabinet earlier today, that is working well, and we're seeing some progress there.
Thank you. Just a few more, sir. Is it likely for the break on pension payments, is that including government employees for workers, is that likely to be extended beyond June, can you say?
We're going to have a look at it.
Right. And I hear you on Financial Secretary Manders. We hear you say, so it's still the budget's still set to go ahead on February 26th as planned. Can you tell us a bit about what the impact, I mean, he, as you say, is a key figure in the ministry, what the impact has been on the pre-budget report and the budget? Did that play any role? I think the pre-budget report was supposed to come out in December.
Originally, my plan was to release the pre-budget report before Christmas. Unfortunately, we missed the deadline, and then we had to deal in early January with the news of Secretary FS Manders' passing, and that certainly has had an impact on our ability to kind of move this forward more quickly. I feel relatively comfortable that we will be positioned to deliver the budget statement on the 26th of February, and we'll marshal the resources to get the work done.
Thanks, sir. And a last one here. Is there any concern in the ministry with yourself, now that in the U.S. we have the Democrats controlling the White House and the Congress, with regards to the tax status of companies in Bermuda, international companies?
Bermuda has had a long history of working with successive governments in the United States, whether they be Republican-led or Democrat-led. So we're looking forward to the new administration coming in tomorrow, and we will do as we've always done. Look forward to working with people on constructive solutions to any challenges that we face.
Minister, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, members of the media. That concludes our press conference for today.